Wow. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Olumide Idowu, and we are live once again today for Climate Wednesday. And I'm super excited because this is another section of our conversation on the Great Green Wall. And it is my joy to say that we have another wonderful actor, uh, you know, somebody that I've been doing a lot about climate action, somebody that I've been working towards sustainable development, and somebody that can talk to us around the issue of Great Green Wall and uh, um, the effects on desertification in Africa. We see the conversation last week was very, very intense because we have one of our lovely sister, our great climate activist in the space that is doing something very, very great. So I will be bringing our guest for today is going to join us very, very soon. And I'm going to bring him on board to also join us by talking about the issue of the Great Green Wall. And today's topic is focusing on desertification. I want us to talk a lot today about the importance of the tree planting. Is the tree planting is a big issue, or is it something that we need to talk about? Is it something that to combat or to have as a discussion? And we as we know that tree planting is very, very important. So we are here today again. We are here today again to have this conversation. So please join us, and let us have this conversation today. I'll be bringing our guest on board that is going to be talking to us on the effects on desertification in Africa. And I want to appreciate all the stakeholders, private sectors, organizations that have been a great support to our movement, the Climate Wednesday. And I also want to appreciate United Nations Development Program, UNDP Nigeria, UNCCD on combating desertification. I want to also appreciate some other organizations that have been great support for this platform, budgets, CSDFnet, and some other organizations that we can. Then the Great Green Wall Initiative itself, the African Union Great Green Wall Initiative also, and the Nigerian Great Green Wall Office, and the Federal Ministry of Environment for the great work and support they have been given. So I will be also appreciate some other people as we move on. I want to also let us know that the issue and the conversation of the Great Green Wall, it's something that is very, very important for most of us here in the sub-Saharan Africa. Let me say in the Sahel, Africa. So it's something that I will like you all to call your friends, your family, your brothers, to be part of this conversation so that we can hear from our guest today that will be touching on the effects of desertification in Africa. So I'll be adding our guest on board. Let me see him. He's coming on board now. It's coming on board. Okay. Yes. Hello, Mr. Freeman.
Yes, hello, Lumide.
Can you hear me?
See you. Yeah, I can hear you. Where about you? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Sorry, your mic is mute. If you can hear me, please. Yes, thank you very much.
Can you hear me
yes,
now?
I can hear you very well. Can you hear me too?
Okay. Sure.
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, perfect. Thank you for joining us from where you're joining us from. It's a pleasure to have you again. And it's a pleasure to see that the great work you are doing. Yes.
Thanks a
So,
lot.
quick one, so that we don't waste much of our time. I don't want us to do this conversation in the next 30 to 45 minutes so that our listeners can also have more understanding. We have been having this conversation for the past 2, 3 weeks now, and we have been talking around the issue of Great Green Wall because that's one of the strengths of Africa now and the Sahel group. And as you know that a lot of African countries also investing in planting a lot of trees. A lot of African countries talking about desertification, desert encroachment, sea levelers and storms. And this is actually contributing to a lot of conversation across the value chain. So thank you once again for giving us your time and for coming on board to be part of this conversation today. Once again, my name is Oluowo, and if you are joining us from anywhere, this is our third edition, yes, I think third edition of the Great Green Wall Conversation on Climate Wednesday. And today we have Mr. Freeman Elohor from ACC-AD, and we're going to be talking to him on the effect of desertification in Africa, focusing on the Great Green Wall. So thank you very much, sir. Can we meet you? Can you tell us about yourself and what you do? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you first, Mr. Oluowo, for
hello. Can you tell us? Can you hear me?
Sure. Is it clear enough?
Okay, you can start. You're just breaking. All right.
I hope, am I audible now?
Yes, you are. You are. You can move on.
All right. All right. My name is Freeman Oluowo. First, I would like to actually thank Oluowo for the passion he has actually invested in this environment and climate promotion, not just in Nigeria, across Africa. Thank you very much, Oluowo. Now, my name is Freeman Elohor. I'm the Center Coordinator for African Center for Climate Action. It's an organization based in Nigeria. What we do is champion community-based and focus environmental and climate issues. What we try to promote is rural people participation in climate and environmental solution. So far so good. We have been involved in researches, capacity building for women and for youth across Africa through research and through what we believe and common participation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to quickly know whether you can hear me very well.
Clearly. I can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you for what you have been doing for the environment. And that is one of the kind of people we are looking forward to in our space to see how they are changing the narrative of the environment and what they are doing concerning the environment. Quickly, let me go straight to our conversation today because it's something that a lot of people want to listen and hear. What is your understanding of the Great Green Wall? Because we want to let our listeners, for the ones that couldn't join from the beginning, from the day we started this conversation, to understand what is your understanding of the Great Green Wall and what is in need actually for the Sahel group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, the Great Green Wall, just as the word says, great green wall, is an African-led movement which is looking at reducing desertification, land deforestation, and contribution to poverty in Africa. Actually, this is the initiative came up around the 1970s, wherein they noticed that somewhere around the Sahel and the Sahara Desert and the countries bounding it were once a green hectare of environment wherein it was recognized as green vegetation and green area. And in a couple of few years, they discovered that that large part of the Sahel or Sahara was losing this greenness, meaning they were losing this forest, they were losing plants, people can no longer farm, people can no longer do things as it were, and they sat down that it is possible they are losing the values and they are losing that green heritage. So it was until in 2007, I think under the leadership of John Kufuor, as an African Union president, he harmonized and brought all African head of states together and said, no, it is time for us to form what we refer to as a wall to protect our environment, that is the Sahel and the Sahara area, from losing that forestation, that green area. And the wall they are building is a tree wall. So that's why they call it green wall. And it's an ambition wherein it started first of all with countries in the Sahel, looking at Senegal and maybe to Djibouti. But all other African countries coming together, they said no, it should be a wall in Africa. It was like 8,000 kilometers square wonder world, wherein they should build, they should plant trees. So the purpose is just this. Instead of losing our trees due to either climate change or due to maybe human activities or in terms of our wrong farm practices, let us plant trees. Let us conserve our green forests. So that is how the green wall came up. And it was 11 countries initially, but today we have over 20 countries, about 21, that is signed on to that great green wall project, and it's an African-led initiative. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that submission, for that contribution. That was very, very, detailed, with action points, with, let me call it, with history that you put in that understanding of the great green wall. And some of our speakers in the past conversation actually also share the same word you just shared with us, because this is a conversation that everybody across Africa, across the Sahel, want to actually understand and know why all this thing is actually happening to us in the country. So, sir, let me quickly go straight into some of the key conversation we're having today. What is desertification and why, and what actually is causing it? When you look at Africa as a country, how do you say what desertification is all about, and how do you see yourself as what does it mean to you and means to the people?
All right, thank you, Mr. Idowu. Now, desertification, I will try to make it very simple and make it to a very good understanding. Desertification is a form of land degradation that happens in dry lands. So I'm going to underline those terms: dry lands. And it happens in dry land. It destroys what the biological characteristics or productivity of that land, and that is the ability of that land or that soil to become more fertile, to produce food. So desertification is a form of land degradation that happens in dry land that alters the biological productivity or formation of that land, and it leads to a lot of soil erosions and infertility of the soil. And desertification can basically be caused by two: climate variability, which we can classify under natural causes, then also human-induced forces, which are man-made activities. So the natural ones will come, which we cannot do so much about, but it is the additional burden or the additional activities, the impact humans have as a result of either urbanization, as a result of land degradation. So let me explain more of that human activities. One, we know that irrigation, if it is not well planned, contributes seriously to desertification. We also know bad or poor farm practices, for instance, bush burning, contributes to what? Desertification. We also know that overgrazing contributes, overcropping contributes. So if you put all these things together with urbanization, even the damming in certain countries, because sometimes we don't see damming as one big problem to desertification, because damming is something that takes water from the soil. And in all these things, it dragged water from the hydrological cycle, which is the water aquifers, where this water gathers. The whole world is connected. So Africa is connected. So by the time you take water, this area, like I made my definition earlier, I said dry land. It means that the water table, that is the water available in this area already, is the water table is low. You know, so that is the difference between dry areas and areas that are considered as rainforest, or areas like maybe we have frequent rainfalls. So this area is already dry. The table where you can get water underground is already far. So by the time you now either remove either tree covers, or you practice wrong farm activities, you burn bushes, and also you practice certain irrigation activities, these things further extract or take water from the soil at a rate that is uncontrollable, because we don't have measuring devices. So what this causes is that desertification results from two main activities. The natural one, we can't control them. Human activities is what we preach in terms of climate solutions, that we should reduce the way we use environmental resources. So now, how does desertification affect humans? Now, what is the value of land when you cannot plant on it? It becomes useless. If you cannot grow crops, you cannot feed your home. Then how do you talk about food sufficiency, or you want to be secured in terms of food? It is already out of place. So food sufficiency is already out of place, because there are no land, available land to farm. So there are no food. If there are no food, it also means that there are no water to grow plants, because if the place is dry, you don't have water to water this plant. Plant can't grow. It requires huge resources. It requires a lot of technological advancement and financial investment to extract water deep down from the water table. How many small-scale farmers have this capacity and this ability to go down with this kind of devices? It's few. So what is left for them is this, is for them to migrate to safer havens where it's green, where they can find water, and where they can find what? Green vegetation. And also, you see that it has affected the food cycle. Foods are not available. There are no water. Starvation of water. As a result, people start moving. It results also to what? Migration. Then imagine somebody coming to your community driven by either hunger, or driven by maybe water needs, or maybe climate change, because by the time you burn the bushes, you destroy your trees, or you cut down your trees, you are looking for firewood, or you are using them for furnitures. Anything that happens to climate, temperature increases, and once temperature increases, it's also what? Dissolve the available soil moisture that gives productivity to the soil. At this point, the soil ability to bear fruit is gone. So for this reason, you move to safe places. And when you get to safe places, there are people who are already habiting those areas. And when these people feel uncomfortable with your activities, it results into what is called conflict. So that is where we have this farmer header crisis around the sub-Saharan Africa, and Nigeria in particular. It's something that we are, the government are thinking hard. Do we stop this header from moving about with their cattle? What is our alternative for them? Our farmers are in their natural environment farming. How do we support them? It has become a very difficult situation. So it causes what we say food scarcity, and once there's food scarcity, it increases the prices in the market. And once the prices in the market is high, it affects the socio-economic activities or the impact on the household. because the salaries people get or where they get their money is not commensurate to the kind of increase that will be experienced. For this reason, no water, people move, migration is there, then there are a lot of conflict. So you can see that these things are intertwined, from environmental climate change, which is already very obvious. It causes a lot of social vices, conflict, and also difficulty to survive. So it requires a lot of policy changes and a lot. I believe I'm going to get into that. So I just went into what desertification is and looking at the impact on the food system and conflict, and also on natural resources. And what is key here, if there are no water in our lands or in our forests, our trees cannot grow. And we know forest areas are natural environment for flora, that is plant and animals. Let me just use the simple term, plant and animal. Previously, our parents at night go to the bush. At short movement, they come with maybe different animals. But today, they go days and they go farming, they say they don't have it. And also the natural activities of earthworms, or in terms of the soil component, nothing works. So desertification will remain a big problem if it is not well tackled. And that is why we are very happy about the Great Green Wall that is being established in 2007, to see that Africa embark on a proper afforestation program, which is tree planting. Instead of losing our forest area, we should plant trees so that we can safeguard the livelihood of some people, reduce conflict, and reduce the food security problems that is emanating from it. Thank you. Back to Olumide, please.
Wow, 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 wow. That was so interesting. I think if I should start writing a book now, I will actually write the introduction to desertification and other related issues. You know, this is something that a lot of people will love to continue to listen to, because one of the key things around this conversation is that it also helps people to actually learn, actually get education, to understand if they want to, get into some activities or some initiative. Because most of us, if we don't read, if we don't learn, or we don't engage ourselves to actually understand what is actually going on before we dive into some activity or some project, we will not be able to get the data that will drive our conversation, or data that will drive the impact we want to put into this thing. So thank you very much for giving us the broad understanding of what desertification is all about, and what actually is causing it across the value chain, across Nigeria, across Africa, and the issue relating to the issue of the Great Green Wall. So quick one, moving on to from what you've already shared and what is actually happening across Africa. And I can see that a lot of conversation has been going on in this space of the Great Green Wall. What are some of the misconceptions about desertification in line with the Great Green Wall? Can you share with us some of the misconception that has been going on? Because some people said, from what I've read, that it's not only about tree planting. Yeah, we know, but what are the misconceptions about this issue? Floor to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Olumide. Now, you know, there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to this Great Green Wall project and initiative. And this is not new. You know, when issues of climate comes, people will always talked about it, that no, they are just using it. Some call it a horse, some call it maybe something to just coerce the poor nations. So it is true, there are a lot of misconceptions. Population growth is one thing that will always drive this kind of misconception, because when you talk about Great Green Wall, you are ordinarily going to what? Take the livelihood of some persons. There are no places all over the world where you talk about conservation, you are not going to ask people to say, please pledge, submit, or provide some of your properties, which is land. And in, you know, the land tenure system in different countries, for instance, in Benin, it belongs to government. except a few indigenous people in Ghana, is quite different than in Nigeria. It's more or less like ownership of individuals and some by government. So it depends on the land tenure system. So how do you not tell people that, okay, this project, we want to plant more trees. We want to provide you food. We are protecting your future. We are trying to ensure food sufficiency for the future. We are trying to reduce conflict tomorrow. We also want to provide you more green jobs and opportunity. Now, conservation. The problem is, how is the government in Africa providing alternative livelihoods embarking on this kind of projects? So the government is yet to communicate adequately on what this Great Green Wall. This is where the civil society organizations and certain indigenous groups need to come in by support from the government and from the international organizations to create more awareness, because if the people are not aware, it is not something that's going to be successful. So population growth is driving. So now alternative livelihood, it's not something government has been able to provide commensurate to what they are asking the people to live for them to be able to what provide this wall, which is these trees they want to plant in this area. That is one. Two, for any conservation project or afforestation project to be very, very successful, it must be community driven or maybe participatory. Today, the government sits in most meetings, come out without getting most of the individuals, the community along. This Great Green Wall was initially a community-driven or focused initiative wherein they said, okay, we should plant trees. We don't want to lose our heritages. We are suffering. There is poverty on our land. But when the government in 2007 upscaled and adopted this initiative, how well have they been able to carry local community along? If you don't carry this local community along, there is no way these people can support your project. And I tell you, Olumide, a participant here today, the project of the Great Green Wall is not successful as it is because it is just about 4% achieved. And the target is to 2030. 2030 is less than 9 years from today, with only Ethiopia planting a huge amount of trees. What are the other 10 Sahel countries doing? Other countries, including Nigeria, what are they doing? Do we just go to international conventions, come back and don't practice? So the misconception about it is that the government is yet to carry the people along, and they are yet to communicate the benefits of this project like others, wherein the government will say, give me your land, we are going to what, industrialize it, we're going to employ you. Now, if you do an afforestation program, it is one way of creating employment. It is one way of, and such employment from afforestation, they call it green jobs. Now, if you ask, how many indigenous people has this project been able to employ? What most government do is they just employ a consortium, a consultant who is not known to them, who hardly will communicate, just bring trees. Sometimes they plant trees that are not what, economic trees. So how do you plant trees that are not beneficial to the people? So we have to start looking all over what we mean by afforestation, tree planting. Give these people economic trees so that they have value for what you are planting, and also employ them so that these people can get jobs, so that in the process of this tree planting, just think, between 2007 and 2030, how many indigenous persons this afforestation project would have employed? 4% achieved. 2030 is just by the corner. So as it is, we have not done well. As it is, we are just still in the talking space. We are yet to adapt, move the people along. So the misconception will continue with growing population, including climate change. So there are a lot of misconception. Going back is for the government to increase proper sensitization, engage the civil society organization and other right organizations and indigenous groups, the traditional rulers, let them become part of it in order for us to gradually erode this kind of misconception that is supposed to be to the benefit of the people. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, thank you very much, thank you very much. That was so detailed. I like what you've just said is not actually different from what some of our speakers have been, raising. But your own also help us to understand it in a broader way, because the issue of misconception has been something that people don't really understand and why it's actually happening. And for me, I also brought in what we call the political will. A lot of things have been happening that people are just taking advantage of the project and making use for their own purpose. And if this continue, I don't see how we are going to really achieve the 2030 or the 2063 agenda of the African Union, which some of us have to actually start asking ourselves, are we really on the right track? And the issue of engaging more stakeholders has been another issue for many of the countries that are actually involved in the Great Green Wall. I've been seeing a lot of promotion on the social media platform of the Great Green Wall, and it makes it to look as if there are a lot of fantastic work that is happening. But why is it that people are still complaining? You also mentioned a lot of things around the livelihood. How do we keep people's livelihood so more sustainable? How do we make sure that when there's an adage that says that when two elephants are fighting, they say the grass suffers it. Why are we going to continue to suffer this issue that the people are taking as an advantage to themselves? So I will say that thank you very much for giving us those key points and making us to understand that the misconception are numerous. They are numerous in the sense that they are not just one or two. There are a lot of things, and the way it affects countries are totally different. Some are also similar, but I can see that the similarities are much, and we just have to start talking about it, and we can start to ask questions on why these things are just like that. Thank you very much. So moving forward, and we've seen in our last conversation last week where we touched a little bit about the poverty part of it. So I would like to ask you that what are desertification, and how is desertification connected to the issue of poverty, and how does it affect, you've already mentioned part of it, but how does it really affect the livelihood of people, connecting desertification and poverty issue?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Olumide. Now, if you look at these areas that are faced by desertification, they are vulnerable set of people. Why do we call them vulnerable? Their land are already prone because they are exposed to a lot of climate variabilities. The quantity of the number of times rainfall in some of this area, this region, is limited. So you notice that first, these people are already impacted negatively. They are already suffering from food insufficiency. So poverty is already smelling around some of these people. Who are the people that uses forest resources? We talk about hunting. Who are hunters? How many politicians or government representatives or the rich go for hunting? We don't have many of them. It is still the poor people, the people in the communities that go hunting. How many persons go to the forest area to farm? It's still the same poor people, or let's say the people who are on that middle class. We don't like calling them poor anymore. These are the people. So, and the more this population of this category of people who access these forest properties or forest resources are more, and the class is more. If you look at the pyramid of development, they are more. So therefore, these people doesn't have the financial capability. For instance, if you look at Niger Republic, Senegal, some of these countries are already dry. Water is already scarce. What you need is what? An integrated or a technology you need to deploy, an engineering for agriculture to get water from the soil in order for you to water crops. Because if you don't get water to the crops, these crops cannot what? Grow. So these people does not have this financial capability. And this is where I love what you said and what we have kept advocating for: political will for the government to provide integrated system like what they do in irrigation, where you provide some systems to ensure that farmers get access to some of these things. So now, how does poverty connect? What, like I said earlier, what is the use of land when the land is facing drought? No water, is deserted, nothing can grow on it. And this category of people are mostly what? Farmers. They are mostly hunters, and they are also fishers. So the rivers are drying up. They cannot access the rivers anymore to fish. They cannot use the land to plant. They cannot go to the forest because combination of climate change and several population growth and human activities, bad practices and bush burning, deforestation has destroyed all these trees. So there are no food. Animals are not there for them to kill or sell to make money for their homes. They can't plant to say, okay, I have even the smallest one we call in agriculture subsistence, the smallest one for me and for my wife and for my children, before you now start talking about the one they are going to give out. So it affects what? Their livelihood, farming, fishing, no water. It affects hunters also because they don't have animals anymore in the bush, because animals, they don't have trees as cover habitat. They start running to the hinterland, going to where trees are. So it affects all of their livelihood. So if you look at the livelihood of people around this area, fishermen, farmers, and hunters, you discover that this is their livelihood. It is poverty. Nothing to eat, nothing to sell, nothing for the mouth, nothing to bring in income for them. So this is where the interconnectivity of poverty. And if you look at the statistics in this world, it's like the gap of the poor is getting wider, and the one of the rich is getting thinner. So that is where we have more persons. That is where we are able to connect desertification to poverty in terms of what their livelihood that is disappearing gradually. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Freeman. And I can tell you that when your livelihood have been taken away from you, what is left for you? Nothing. And that is why we will continue to advocate for that, change, local change, because these are the people that are actually suffering the most. And also, in other words, we also make sure that we make the local community understand how they can take ownership of what they actually do, because they also are involved in making sure that they take ownership of their own existence, their own space. So thank you very much. Once again, we are still live on Climate Wednesday. Today's conversation is focusing on effect of desertification in Africa. And our conversation, the series we're having this month is on the Great Green Wall. For the past 2-3 weeks now, we have been having this conversation online with some of our speakers, and we're very happy once again to have Mr. Freeman Elohor from ACAD, and we have been engaging him in some conversation, and he has been giving us those. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think
okay.
you're fine, but it's okay now.
Yeah, so from where we are coming from and where we are now, we are very, very happy. Sorry,
Yes,
my network was.
I don't know if I can add something
So,
quickly from what you
okay,
said.
good.
Please.
Good.
So, like you mentioned, and in our trail of conversation now is that we must give ownership to the local people, which is the indigenous people. And that is why even in the Cataways 2002 report, they had to look at the bottom-up approach. And today, all climate negotiation has also given an opportunity for local and indigenous people to get involved in these processes, because at the international picture, they have also found out that the local people are not given the opportunity in the governance of some of these their problems or contributing to solutions. So the truth is, we work at the grassroots. You are a grassroots expert and you interact with the grassroots people all the time. And I work with them all the time. I tell you, the people at the grassroots, they are the easiest to convince to pursue an initiative. They are interested, they are willing, but the distrust, the betrayal over time, wherein government comes and say, this is what we want to do. They support this initiative, they provide them lands, they provide them even directions. At the end, they come back and backstab them, or wherein some of these projects are what abandoned, or maybe they don't just know, they are kept in the dark of what is happening. So going forward, like what we have observed, the local people are even more committed to the issues of climate change, desertification, because they are not access to the kind of money government people are access to, or maybe some of their children are not in government to give them money to what sustain or survive. So they want to protect or conserve this livelihood and to ensure that they live little more before they die. So what I'm advocating here is sincerity of purpose. If this great green work project has to what succeed, we must come sincerely, work with the community and indigenous people to see how their own local solution. Don't just come and say this is what is happening, maybe for instance in Scotland or in the US or in the UK, that have gone so many years ahead of you, wherein technology has been advanced, where they can just take water, they know how much water is available on their soil. Then you are just come to say this is what. Let's not start talking these advanced sciences or knowledge or telling them technology. Let's work with local indigenous experts, local knowledge. Let them see what we are doing. I can assure you, desertification, climate change, and all these land degradation issues are well known to them, and they are ready to support this initiative to become more prosperous. That is what I wanted to add.
Wow, wow, wow. Sincerity of purpose. I think that is a very action word, a call to action, both for the government and other civil society organizations to start looking at how they can engage and make people to connect with what they are doing in this kind of conversation. So thank you very much. That was very, very detailed for me. And I think as time goes on, in this our series of Great Green War, we'll be able to also listen to a lot of people, because we are looking for a way whereby people will be able to use these outputs to drive conversation locally. And we also help them to start looking at what can I do that can change the narrative of my space, that can change the narrative of the local community I am, and that can also contribute to the achievement of the Great Green Wall. That is one of the ideas we are looking at. And I want to say to everybody listening to us from Facebook, on our Twitter, on our YouTube, if you are watching us, if you have any question, please drop it in the comment box. Our speaker is going to be, responding to those questions and all, and we're going to have more conversation today. So let's continue so that we don't take too much time. I'm very, very happy for this conversation today. So, sir, what can we do to aid those in poverty who suffer from desertification? I think you've already, said a lot on that now in your last comment. but can you give us some action points of what we can do, number one, as citizens, of what we can do to aid those in poverty who suffer from desertification? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Olumide. So going forward, like I said that the community people are interested, that they want to be party to it. Now, we have to start building green villages, green communities. And how do we do this? It is not right for you to start giving one big organization out there to just plant, maybe you just say, go and plant 200 million trees in paper, but it gets to the community and plant just maybe 10,000 trees. You know, you just look for one influential person in the community and they just touch ground with some few. So how do we do? The people in the community, it is time for we to start looking at them and handling them with more seriousness and more looking at a good partnership with them. Let's go to them. The traditional ruler, the youth group, the women group, they can form a small team to form a green, to establish green community. You empower them with whatever resources that is available to start afforestation project. If it is mangrove area, like the coastal area, give them mangrove trees. Also mix it up with economic trees that is of value to them, wherein they know that this time of the year, this season, they can either get mango or get guava, or they can get this thing. So economic trees, it's something that it is really good for them. Interact with them and ask them that, what do you need? What kind of trees it's more viable for you? If you tap it, for instance, a rubber tree or something, it's a selective way of doing this thing. The people understand this. Then going forward, it is the Great Green Wall. It is nothing far from what? Conservation of natural resources, especially what? Trees. Afforestation programs. Now, you cannot just take from someone to say, give me this parcel of land, I want to use it, I protect it, don't touch it, don't cut it, wherein over time it will solve climate issues for you or desertification or want to plant. No, you need to start looking at alternative livelihood. Don't just jump in. For instance, you can call and meet me, I live in the village. Don't just assume you want to give me a sewing machine. That is my problem. No, a sewing machine might not be my problem. It is nice you ask me, what do I need as an alternative livelihood? So this interaction is missing between the local people. Asking them, don't just go and read in books and say, if you are taking forest, you can just give them petty money for trade. What about if I don't like opening a small shop? What about if maybe I don't want to go into sewing, I don't want to go into wedding? You need to do this kind of feasibility or recognizant visit to the place and support them and ask them what they want. You can now start having a ratio of their needs, a ratio of how you can improve their livelihood for them when you collect this forest area. And you need to communicate to them with languages they understand. Climate change, we are talking about desertification, they are not new. They need to see. Tell them in their local languages. Tell them in the languages they understand. Don't just come and say climate change. If you go to the village, for instance, and ask them, how is the rain, for instance, they tell, oh, rain, how is your plant? You say, yes, today now we go to the villages, we now say, you know that thing, now all these things, that's what they call climate change. You say, yeah, it is true. Climate change is real. They support climate change movement. So these are for the areas we want to either afforest or maybe we want to conserve. Okay, their forest areas in order for them. Then also, by the time you take their forest from them, there should be proper carbon crediting. They should benefit it. If you need them to do selective deforestation, train them and identify, it will work with them. just as they have like in Oronigbe sometime in Edo State, which share was sponsored with the Nigeria Conservation Foundation in Edo State. This kind of project, the community people were involved. So in this case, you know, they know what to do, what not to do. The people are the best policing of themselves. They can tell you, don't go there. They know who to arrest, and they know the language to use in order to get people to buy in into what you are doing. So there is something I know, CDMing, carbon credit. If these people are giving you their forest, are you paying them equally to the kind of land they have given to you? How do you calculate their carbon credits? Then why do you make the process so rigorous for even these people who have supported this initiative? They can write, even if they hire a consultant to write some of them, the processes are becoming more tedious in order for them to access some of these facilities. How do they access these facilities? They cannot. So they just tell you, no, the one we want to see, it is the one that is available to us. So we need to simplify the processes of some of these carbon credits and some of these carbon mass acquisition we are trying to advocate globally. Then for those areas that you cannot want remediate, who are already living in areas that we say, oh, this area is deserted, you need a lot of investment, technological advancement. If Dubai can grow into a green environment today, if the Arab nations can grow, I can tell you the truth, Africa continent through the Great Green Wall can do the same thing. It is just our level of seriousness, commitment, and this integration to work together. So if you find that these people are already suffering, just find a way to relocate them to safer areas that are green. We can start looking at mass housing schemes inside this little village. That is what I talked about, green villages, green communities. You just design it with maybe a block of 2 rooms, depending on the household. Then you just make it available to them, relocate them, you give them land, you ensure that there are little training for them. So you provide for those people who are already living in areas that are what it will take years to recover. So that is for one, green villages for them. Then those areas that are suffering gradually, because desertification don't come overnight. It is a process. It is an overtime thing. Today, you can, it is possible where you are living is still green, but don't expect it to be green in the next 10 years. Sometimes I still tell people, why do we build houses? You go to a land, you have trees, you just tell maybe them to cut all the trees in your land. For me, I don't agree to that. Leave some land, some trees to protect the environment. You want to build, you just say cut down all the trees. You want to build industries, even the same government or institutions that are saying a forest or promoting this Great Green Wall initiative, they still want to build. They will just look at this great landmass, they will just cut it down. So we need to start looking at our attitude change, attitudinal change. The first thing that has to change in anything that has to do with environmental change, environmental management, is attitude. If we have the right attitude, we can speak the right language. If we have the right attitude, we can go to the people at the local community, speak their language, understand what they want, and communicate with them. So what I'm saying here is this: we have to start looking at desertification as it suits you. Some are already into desertification. Some are just beginning to experience desertification. So, so we have to design program that has to be with all these stages. And that is what I've enumerated in green villages, green communities, relocation of some people, afforestation, providing of carbon credit commensurate to the people, livelihood. Ask the people what they want, not just assume. So this is where I want to stop here so that we can pick up the next question. Thank you.
Wow, wow. I was just trying to jot down some of your fantastic, submission. I'm very, very happy to, to have you on board today, because this is another education platform for some of our guests that they are hearing us from anywhere around the world. And for those that are not online now, you can still watch again and again and again. If you go to our YouTube channel, all our videos of this conversation is there. And you mentioned something around green villages. I think this is another chance for Nigerians, Africans to start looking at that, because when we build this, it helps our community to be more, more encouraging for them to start going to that part you talk about: right attitude, right language, right attitude, right mindset. And a lot of people will be able to understand that. Because for me, I keep telling people that if you, the attitude towards the environment speaks for the outcome of what is going to happen from that kind of environment. If everybody is complaining in an environment, if everybody is not trying to think about innovatively, like one of my mentors always say, we say innovative volunteerism. If people don't start thinking innovatively, I think we will continue to be where we are. And as I mentioned, that the political will as well, we also need to understand that your submission about the right attitude is something that is useful for we, the civil society, we, the young people, we, the youth, that are actually looking at a step to change the narrative, to make sure there's livelihood, to make sure that the issue of deforestation, desertification, and a lot of issues, the sea level rise that is happening across Africa now, can be solved with the right attitude. And we can now use that one to demand for transparency and accountability, and which I think is a very, very good submission that you said as well. And you said this we should design certification. You talk about an issue of livelihood. It's very, very important in this conversation of the Great Green Wall. And we can only achieve this with the right attitude and right behavior towards making sure that we gain our land back to ourselves and we're able to enjoy the land. You also mentioned something around getting the land as people cut all that. I can tell you very well that that is happening everywhere. And we are looking forward to make sure that we continue to advocate for people. If you cut 10, plant 100. It is a very nice idea because that is the right attitude we are talking about. Nobody is asking people not to cut tree, by the way. But the point here is that when you cut a tree that is maybe is causing a particular, destruction, you should try as much as possible. Plant more trees. You cut one, plant 10. You cut 10, plant, let us have that right attitude to replace those things so that the nature will not change, it will not be against us. The nature will be, be conducive for us, and all of us will be able to have a place to say, yes, I can be able to enjoy the atmosphere, even without the energy. A lot of people, sitting down on a let me call it mango tree, or on a kind of economic tree, can give you that shelter, can give you that space to have a conversation that makes a lot of sense. And those are the things that you just mentioned about the right attitude. And if people don't have that right attitude, there's no how we can achieve the Great Green Wall. And so thank you very much, Mr. Freeman. Once again, if you are still on this call, you can, join us, ask questions, and drop down. If you ask after the call, we can also share it with our speakers to also send a response to us and that. So we are moving to the close of this conversation because we are almost, let me say, an hour now. We are like 58 minutes into this call. And you can see there's a very, very long conversation and submission from our guests today.
Is it possible I just say something quickly before the last one, if it's possible?
Yes, you can.
When we look at deforestation or afforestation, sometimes I ask people, what sense does it make to us wherein you cut down trees, then you plant flowers, then you have a very big compound, you go and import, you bring expensive, maybe some are coconuts, but they are not edible. But you plant them everywhere in your compound to just give your aesthetic, to beautify your compound. Why can't you just plant simple coconuts that will also give value? So we need to also start looking at orientation. The truth is, we claim to know. I must say the truth. we are yet to do enough. The angle of the government, the angle of the civil society organization, the angle of the entire society, we have not done enough in creating enough awareness to tell that man who has that money to go and bring one tree for one country, so expensive, you plant flowers everywhere in your compound, none of them is edible. You cut down trees, all in the religious perspective that maybe one owl tree, or maybe those kind of religious perspective that maybe it becomes a den for maybe one satanic activity. So religious belief, we must also take this campaign to our religious houses, wherein they have also told some of our members, to Christians or maybe religious persons. So okay, yeah, if you have trees, there is one night meeting going on, there is one issue, and you know this is very prevalent in Africa, you know. So we need to start proper awareness. I think maybe after this meeting we'll have time to really talk, and we'll talk, because the time is never enough to discuss this kind of issues, you know, online. But few things I'm doing in the rural community, for instance, in the Niger Delta, I've had communities who say don't access our community, who have opened up. The oil and gas community, God host come, have opened up to say, if it is tree, come and plant. If it is for us to manage our environment, let us know. If it is community advocacy, join me, we want to do more. So I think we'll talk about that after now.
Thank you very much. And that is one of our passion in International Climate Change Development Initiative. We are very much welcome to engage ourselves in advocacy, in campaign that is more sustainable, and that we help the local community to drive that right attitude and right conversation. And I can tell you, I can bet you that if we just need to continue to talk about it, because this is going to be on a record that one day, Mr. Freeman somewhere is making an impact, is actually changing people's attitude, and is building the future that we want. And as the UNDP or the United Nations always say, that we are building back better. You know, this is the right time. We need to build back our environment. We need to make our environment more sustainable for that single boy, single child, single woman, everybody across the globe. So thank you very much, Mr. Freeman. And let me first of all say that it is a very big honor for me, like, to have you today. This is very, very intense for me, as in is a knowledge transfer, not for only our audience, but particularly for me and some of our volunteers watching across the world or across Nigeria as well. So let us quickly go to our last question, which I think is one of the way we want to say a good sending out message to our people. What should be the role of government? That is number one. And what should be the role of other stakeholders on how desertification can be reversed? You know, we've talked a lot about things here today. Well, I think we lost our speaker. He will be coming back, and I want to also say that that's very, very interesting to have our speaker today. It's something that is a very, interesting thing for me on my organization, and we are very happy to have him. I think he's back now. He's back. Oh, Mr. Freeman, sorry, we lost you a little bit. People don't want your people.
Yes, sir.
I don't know why they don't want us to hear your last comments, your last, I don't know. Anytime we are having this kind of call, when we get to that part of submission for what should be the role of government, we always
you asked for my last comment.
Yeah, no, I'm still saying something. I will come to that.
You asked for my last comment on the topic.
No, can you hear me? Hello? Okay. I think our speaker is actually... Can you hear me? Hello? So, like I was saying, I think we're going to have... Anytime we want to have this kind of last comment about what the government should be doing, the role of the government, the civil society, youth-led organization, private sector. That is when we always have this issue of, most time we always have issue of internet breaking and stuff. But I can bet you that Today's conversation has been very, very educative. And for most of you that have not joined us today, please and please try to go back to all our network, our social media platform, as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, to actually see what we have. Let me bring back our guest so that he can give us his last submission. Mr. Freeman, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Sorry, network can be terrible.
No problem. It's always happen anytime we are going to the government submission. So a lot of people always ask us what is going on. So let us close by asking you that what should be the role of government in this issue of this conversation we're having today, and what should be the role of civil society organization, in other words, the private sectors as well. What should be their role in our conversation today? Thank you, sir.
So thank you very much. So we're going to look at the recommendation in three forms: government, private sector, and civil society. So first, I would like to begin with government because they hold a lot of edge when it comes to driving. So if initiative comes, we need not keep some of this initiative to ourselves as government. It is time for you to identify the right stakeholders to put on board, and sometimes we should share this kind of party affiliation, this party thing, wherein if you don't belong to my party or I don't know you, we should start looking at merits. We should start looking at experts, look at persons who are vast, who are knowledgeable in subject area, and make them to head some of this initiative in our country and the sub-national level. And as you go to the grassroots more, it is high time you start look at the right stakeholders, the traditional rulers, and the youth group, that. So now, what I meant here now is that government should start identify the right stakeholders for her initiative. Don't look at the kind of party affiliation in driving this thing anymore. Look for the right person to steer that initiative at that.
I think sorry about that, our guest. Our guest
Support.
is having
Can you hear me
internet.
now?
Yes, we
Okay.
can. Welcome.
Support the environment with the right policies that will encourage the public-private partnership. There are the private partnership, the private sector, they are out there for business. They want to do business. But if you don't create the right environment for them to come in, there is no way you can make it open. And sometimes you make them come in another way. You are using a lot of tax regime or a lot of setting/armor in getting them not to do their job. And also, the kind of land tenure system in Africa, the land tenure system in Africa is still very wrong. We need to start looking at land ownership, the security system, tenure system, wherein you see one man own a land for the next 50 to 20 years. He's not developing it. The land is just there for him and his children. We have to start looking at leasing so that we can have the private sector have access to land, and also for what? Young people. Young people really at the moment don't have access to land. So if the private sector does not have access to viable land, or maybe land that are open to development. In Africa, for instance, Nigeria, I can speak for, we are yet to have good road access to some of this land in the rural area, wherein you need to bring in maybe food, So if, for instance, you are not telling the private sector to invest into some of this land that are available, there are no land, there are no security. So how do they move these things to the cities where they have produced? So that is one area you have to move the private sector. So we have to look at the land tenure system, land security, access to land. And it's high time we need to start giving young people access to land. Young people in Africa at the moment are yet to be access to land, because the land has been squeezed by parents who have some monopolistic wealth or monopolistic strength in the past. Today, lands are not available, so expensive. Then going to the private sector need to start looking at long, medium, and long-term investments. You know, how many of the private sector, even the banks today, except very few, which I would not want to mention on this platform, as they are not promoting anyone. You know, how many of them understand green bonds? How many of them know carbon credits, investment in forest facilities? You know, many of them are yet to know. And most of these private investors, they want quick returns. You know, so they want something that they just put in their money in a short time, they get money. So that is where the government need to provide them some soft landing incentives, so that when they invest in some of these medium and long term, they can actually get in their money back, or maybe get some tax regime, you know, because the government is squeezing them somehow, you know. So the private sector need to be tutored, they need to be trained, they need to hire environmental experts, carbon experts, social experts who are vast in environment, economists who are vast in environment, to train them, to tell them that when we invest in carbon facilities and forest facilities, we can win more money back. Then for the civil society organization, for me, I've always said it, the strife or the competition among the civil society space, we need to water it down. You know, even if we have everybody owning or running one civil society organization, is still not enough to cover the multifaceted problems we have across Africa. The rate at which maybe we antagonize, looking for superiority or coverage, or maybe dominance, it is not right. It is at that point, a civil society organization, most of us are not driven by money. We should be driven by passion. We should be motivated. We should be motivated by the kind of change we want to cause, not for the kind of money, the same way the politicians we speak against in the social space. You know, the kind of cars they want to drive and the houses they want to build, or the kind of facility they own as their own building. This is exactly what the civil society are fighting for. So we kind of leave what is what nitty-gritty or internal for us. So the civil society organization need to go back to the drawing board, create more awareness. The civil society need to organize in-house training. So many of these civil society organizations just jump into the space. Climate change is killing us. Desertification is there, and it's affecting food security, it's affecting land. But if you ask them, what is climate change component? What is climate change vulnerability? What is climate change impact on water resources, on land? How does it affect food sufficiency? This they don't know. So we need to train ourselves, so that by the time we have opportunity of meeting these community people, because we are actually the voice for the common man. We are the voice for the downtrodden. We are the voice for the community people, because we represent one constituency. So we need to train ourselves. We need to partner among ourselves and seek external partnership where you are limited. Partner an organization, limit competition. So by the time we do this, collaborate each other, speak with one voice and at one pace, we can cover much, and we can now have better voice. My knowledge plus your knowledge is what we need to make Africa a better place. Thank you.
Let me clap for you. Let me clap for you, my brother. Thank you so much. My knowledge, your knowledge is what we need to build a better Africa that will be for us and for you and for the people. Thank you so much. I can't start mentioning all those recommendations you've mentioned. I will just pick one or two. I'm very happy that you mentioned about the civil society organizations and how people are actually doing some things in silos. For me, I just believe that collaboration and co-creation of ideas is what will make us to be where we are today. And it will also help us to be serious in front of policymakers. And it will make them to understand that these guys are coming together to speak one voice and to speak one idea, and which I think is a very, very key important thing for us to start talking about and start looking at how we can do it. So thank you very much, Mr. Freeman. And I'm very, very happy to say we are very grateful for you coming to be part of this conversation. I'm 100% sure that I will be bringing you back on this Climate Wednesday very soon. Maybe in one of our series in a couple of months to come, we're going to be bringing you on board and to see how we can also talk on chat way forward. And don't forget our conversation after the call, maybe sometime into the weekend, we can have this conversation to see how we can build more, platform and that can, build that what we call the grassroots conversation, because that is what we need presently now. Like people always say, we don't need to wait for the government. Let us show them what we are doing. Let us show them that we are capable. And you also mentioned that the government also needs to invest and get people involved, like experts, people that actually understand the environment. They need to understand where they are coming from and what they are actually saying. And you also mentioned about identifying the right stakeholders, which they will bring on board to be one of their, that can support them in achieving their agenda. And one thing again is that every initiative that the government is working on needs the contribution of both the private and the civil society organization, and not leaving the young generation behind, because we are the one that is going to be there when our leaders or our parents or our mothers, everybody left. And you also mentioned that that we should start looking at the right policies that will drive a great implementation, because it's only talk. When it comes to implementation strategy, nothing is happening. And that is where you see that we don't see anything. Everything just stay on paper and nothing is happening. And I also want to use this opportunity to call on the private sector as well to start looking at that possibility of investment opportunity in younger generation, in businesses that we recruit people for green jobs, and which is going to help us to achieve the Great Green Wall, because the Great Green Wall is not only for most of the northern countries now again, or northern region, is now the property, or let me say, is now the concern of every country, concern on every region. So thank you very much, Mr. Freeman and Elohim, for coming on board today. We hope to have you some other time. Thank you. And let me say this: we always have this as say before people go. What is going to be your call to action? That is going to just be a sentence to summarize everything we have been talking about. Just a sentence. Thank you.
Desertification is real. Climate change is real. The future belongs to the young people. Take action now.
Thank you very much. Take action now to be part of what is happening, both on desertification, both on the issue of the Great Green Wall. Start taking action. Thank you very much. And we want to say a very thank you from my team, from our partner, and from everybody that is watching from everywhere all over the world. We are very happy to have you. Have a great evening. Bye.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. I'm super excited that we're able to have Mr. Freeman today on our call. It's a very big honor for me and my team at ICCDI Africa and Climate Wednesday to say a big thank you to our speaker today. And as you can see, he has already mentioned a lot of things in that call. I want you all to go back, watch again, listen again, digest, and let us start taking action and make our environment more sustainable. This conversation on the issue of the Great Green Wall is something that it comprises of you and I want to see all of us having an input, having a contribution to make sure that the Great Green Wall come to a fulfillment, and we are all part of the implementation. So thank you very much, and we want to say bye for now, and we hope to have you next week on another edition of Climate Wednesday, and the conversation is still on the Great Green Wall. Thank you to all our partners, the volunteers, our team, friends and families, our supporters on International Climate Change Development Initiative. Let me use this opportunity to also give a shout out to our co-founder, Esther Barakwe. Happy birthday to you. As you clock another year today, we wish you a long life and prosperity. Thank you all and have a blessed evening. Bye.